Madam Speaker, normally when I rise in the House, I'm very pleased to put words on the record about all the issues we talk about here. But today I rise with extreme frustration and disappointment concerning the sexual misconduct in the Canadian military and the lack of results from this Liberal government and the failure of the Defence Minister to take this issue seriously. The Conservative motion on the table today rightfully calls for the resignation of the Defence Minister because of his record on this issue, because of the men and women that he has let down in our Canadian Armed Forces who have been sexually exploited. I listened intently to the Minister's speech today in response to our motion, and I was waiting, hoping that he would express regret for his record on failing to address sexual misconduct in the military, but he didn't. There was no personal acknowledgement that he has thus far failed to send a clear message to the most powerful men in our military that report to him that this behaviour will not be tolerated and that this culture is no longer acceptable. The Minister has been in charge of our military for over 6 years. And yet in that time, and especially in the last 5 months, we have seen 8 senior-ranking military officials resign in disgrace over allegations of sexual misconduct under his watch. In the 5 months since the scandal concerning General Vance broke, who at the time was the head of our military, it has only gotten worse. Most recently, Canadians learned that the man who has authority over the investigation of sexual misconduct went golfing with the man accused of that misconduct. After 5 months of headlines, they thought it would be okay to go golfing together, the clearest violation of conflict of interest that I have ever heard of. When I saw that headline the other day about the golfing scandal, it truly sickened me to know how little has really changed in the last 5 months of repeated headlines and conversations about this scandal. And I can't imagine how that headline was received by the men and women in the military who have been raped, abused, and mistreated by their superiors, to know that nothing has changed. This is after the Minister has answered dozens and dozens of questions in this House and in committee and by reporters about this issue since it broke in February. And time again, he has said he's essentially proud of his progress on this issue with that disclaimer, oh, there's much more work to do though, don't worry, we'll get to it. Well, the fact that the man in charge of the investigation thought it would be acceptable to go golfing with his buddy, the man accused of the misconduct, to me, is all the information I need to know that this Liberal minister clearly has failed to pass on the message that he has so proudly shared in the House of Commons with members from all parties. He's happy to say the words to reporters, to the opposition, and to his voters, but is apparently incapable with following through, being a leader, laying down the law. He is the head of our military. The buck stops with the Liberal Minister of Defence. And that this culture of the old boys club, them protecting each other from accountability, from demeaning and disrespecting women in our military, he has demonstrated, the Minister, that he does not have the ability to follow through on his words, or the golfing scandal would have never happened. That's why we are asking for his resignation today, Madam Speaker. And I want to speak for a moment what it's like for the thousands of women in uniform who have served our country and the millions more women in Canada who have experienced sexual harassment in the workplace. And I say women, but we know, of course, men also experience this. In fact, 30% of the sexual misconduct complaints in our military are from men. So it's important that we don't forget them either. But I can only speak from the female perspective, and that's what I'll be doing today. And I'll use the example of the email General Vance sent to a junior officer that he far outranked, because not only does it show what he thinks is acceptable behavior, but it speaks perfectly to the broader issue of the power imbalances in the workplace when you bring sexual relations into it. So a junior-ranking military official met General Vance at some function, and he offered her mentorship advice, career advice, if she ever needed it. It's pretty exciting as a young, aspiring career woman to get an offer of mentorship by your superior, and particularly as a woman, career advice from an older man is very, very valuable. We live in a man's world, so that career advice, you can't put a price on it. So I can imagine she was quite excited for the opportunity. But then, when she emailed him for that career advice, he concluded his reply in his email, and I'm going to quote this, what he said, or ... we could throw caution to the wind and escape to a clothing-optional island in the Caribbean. I heard the beer is good there. Cheers, JV, end quote. Now, I don't know this woman, but I do know that how she must have felt reading that email. She was probably excited to see the email pop up in her inbox, see what he was going to say. She opens it, only to see that he was propositioning her for sex. And when that happens, and this happens all the time, make no mistake, Madam Speaker, when a woman gets a message like that, whether it's in person or a text or an email or a phone call, as a woman, you instantly get a pit in your stomach, like a vice grip around your stomach. Your heart starts beating, you may start to sweat, you're sickened with anxiety and dread because you know in that instant everything has changed for you. Not for him, but for you. With that comment, whether it was flippant or deliberate from General Vance, I'm not really sure which one is worse. General Vance changed the entire dynamic of that relationship. And why is that? Well, not only are these types of relations against the rules in the military, which he would have well known, but if they're unwanted advances, which clearly it was, now it's an ordeal that she has to deal with that she didn't ask for. Now it's a situation that she's going to stress over, lose sleep over, and try to navigate without damaging her career. This woman has to figure out how to push back, say, I'm not interested, without damaging his ego. Perhaps, I think all women in this chamber will know when a man gives you advances you don't want, there's that nervous laughter, so funny, get your hand off me. I think all the women in this chamber have probably experienced that at some point or another. Every woman has had to deal with this at some point in her career, I'm going to guess, and every woman I know certainly has, and particularly it's insidious when it's at the workplace. Or perhaps it was an aggressive drunk at the bar. And we know the feeling of dread with having to try our best to let these men down gently so we don't hurt their ego. And make no mistake, I have met thousands of more men who are amazing allies to women. But I have come across those insidious men in my career and in my life, Madam Speaker. And these women know that if she doesn't tread carefully, we know that verbal abuse could ensue or perhaps violence. And for her career, it's her name. If her name comes up for a promotion, for example, or a new posting or any new opportunity, and the old boys are talking about who they're going to pick for that promotion or that new post, and her name comes up, she knows that if she hurts his ego with her response, what kind of reference do you think he's going to give her when her name comes up? Let's be real here. That's what's going on. That's what a woman has to deal with when unwanted sexual advances come their way from their male superiors in the workplace. And this happens all the time. It's particularly insidious, as I said, when it comes from work because it's your career. Everything that you've put your work into is at stake in that ridiculous moment that was often thoughtlessly said to you. And General Vance did that to her. He might not have given it a second thought, but if that's the case, that's really how detached from reality he really is, how drunk on power he and his fellow high-ranking military officers really are. They have no idea what it's like for the women they do these things to. And we know this kind of behavior is just the tip of the iceberg. It's symbolic of a greater problem. Women have been sexually abused, raped, harassed day in and day out in our military, all while trying to do their jobs, keep their heads down, and advance their career like everybody else. But there are landmines like this everywhere as women rise up the ranks in their career. I know it, I've lived it, just like millions of other women. I'm not unique, but it is real and it happens every single day. But I think what's most disappointing is this Liberal government got elected twice on their feminist promises and credentials, and yet here we are, 6 years later, no feminist change seen in our military. The Defense Minister has spoken at length about this, and yet nothing has happened. The scandals just keep rolling out. Every day a new headline. These men think going golfing during an ongoing sexual misconduct investigation is somehow acceptable just a few days ago, and that's the Minister's record on this issue, Madam Speaker. That is why we're calling for him to resign. So before I conclude, I just have two quick things to say, and I want to very seriously thank the dedication of the tireless effort of the Conservative members on the Defence Committee. I'm very proud to serve alongside them. They have been tireless in their pursuit for justice for the women that have been mistreated and the men in our military. And to the men and women in our military who have suffered through this hell, and I do not choose that word lightly, Madam Speaker, I say to you, we are with you, we have your backs, and we will not stop until there's a reckoning in our Canadian military. And I will conclude with a message to women Liberal MPs in this House. I know that they are all proud feminists. I know that. But now is the time to walk the talk. If you're going to go door to door in the next election and tout your feminist credentials, then you have to stand up for women when it counts. It counts today. Your minister has failed the women in our military. He has failed to stand up for them. He has failed to fulfill his duty and hold these powerful men accountable. He has failed to send the message, not okay to go golfing with the accused when an ongoing investigation is going on. There's no way around this. There's no other way they can try and spin it. That's the reality. And I know that the Liberal members in their hearts, particularly the women, know what I'm saying is correct. And, the minister may be a nice guy, but that's not the point. He clearly cannot fulfill his duty. And in conclusion, the current minister has proven he cannot defend women who have been sexually harassed, raped, and abused. The women in our military only need 7 Liberal MPs to abstain or, better yet, vote for his resignation. He can still be an MP, but he should not have control over changing the culture in our military after he has let us down as women so profoundly. So to the 7 Liberal MPs, I ask that you please consider this and do the right thing. Thank you, Madam Speaker.